How's it going, everyone? We're back with another BGX round table discussion. I have my guest Benedikt ItsSanitoeter here, and we're gonna just go over some new Capenna spoilers. So we're gonna be pretty excited. I know, since the resident Jund player here is getting a lot of new tools potentially. So we're gonna have a nice discussion, talk about what cards may be playable in the BGX archetype. Benedikt, if you want to introduce yourself again.
Well, as you already mentioned, I'm a Junt aficionado, most of the time playing some sort of Junt mid-range. Recently without Saga, so
Mm-hmm.
I'm very excited for some new toys to play with. And most importantly, I think in the mana base, there's gonna be some changes.
Mm-hmm. So let's get right to it. The first card of the Triomes, if you want to introduce that.
Yeah, well, so most people probably are already aware of the wedge triomes being in modern, I want to say, and all of them see frequent play. They have been very good in just fixing your mana from turn one onwards. And now the shards, most importantly, Junt, is getting their own toys to play with. And yeah, so I already said Junt is gonna play this. I have a couple of other decks in mind that will benefit from that. Um, on top of my list is actually Bond Control,
Hmm.
because Bond's mana has been atrocious in the let's say last 2 years. So that's another deck I think will benefit like greatly from those kind of lands.
Yeah, especially in Jund where you have Ren and Six and you are playing, stuff like Forgotten Cave, which I'm not sure if you'll still be playing because it is really efficient to cycle. Like one mana versus three is a big difference. I don't know if you'll just be playing both, but the deck runs stuff like Seasoned Pyromancer. Potentially, I know you don't like that card, but like Escaping Croxa, um, it runs endurance in the sideboard potentially. Like it's such a color intensive deck. So being able to just like at least from an Abzan perspective when we have our Triome, it just makes stuff like casting Dam and overloading it, having Tarmogoyf, having endurance for like hard casting Force of Vigor. It just smooths out the mana so much. I think the main concern I have, I guess, is Jund is a little bit more lower to the ground. I don't know if playing this on turn one to like curve out nicely is going to be more detrimental than not. But it's just, I think it's still pretty free. I think it's just going to be getting used to, I guess, from a Jund perspective because it is kind of, you want to go 1, 2, 3 versus abs, and you can kind of play this on tapped on turn one and then curve out from there.
It's not necessarily true because a lot of games when and I as soon as those got spoiled, I started paying attention to this. You oftentimes like fetch tapped on turn one, and you don't necessarily always want to like turn one bolt something. Obviously, turn one discard is still going to be relevant, but like another usual play pattern could be like turn one Ragavan dies, and then what? Thoughtseize for one mana and leave the other one open. Well, just fetch a Triumph. I think you will have spots to fetch this Triumph, and especially with my kind of builds, I usually went for with like green, red, and like one drops. This Triumph will help you a lot. And I'm not sure if I already wrote this somewhere, but even before the Triumph got spoiled, I tested actually a Singleton Canyon Slough to be able to fetch for and sack with Reclaimer to get your cycle engine going. And like this is you almost want to play this, and I think this is even more free, even though it's like more expensive to cycle. And like this makes like Reclaimer like it's just a nice gimmick. You wouldn't like bank on this be winning you games, but you always wanna like you have the option to go for it if you want to. So I think like mana wise, it's almost free. You have one tap land now in your deck. But like the oldest used to run like Raging Ravine and stuff, so and they also survive. So I don't see a reason why this wouldn't be like a good inclusion.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a slam dunk. I think it's like do you run this as your only cycling land, or do you also play this with Forgotten Cave? And now that you have stuff like Boseiju, which is kind of an auto include, I feel like in the mana base, but do you still run Takanuma? Do you still run Silkenzan? I think it's the red one. Like, are you gonna like you have so many utility lands? Like,
Yeah,
what's
I
going to
agree.
get cut? Like, it's definitely not gonna be the Triumph. So, are you gonna cut the Forgotten Cave? Or are you gonna cut the Takanuma? Like, that's the kind of question I guess we should.
You
What do you think?
also don't forget there's another utility land. It's Ursa Saga you usually want to run.
Yeah, I think
Um,
it's funny because I know you mentioned in the beginning of the scene that you don't play Urza Saga anymore, and I've kind of fallen in the same boat where maybe this we're going off topic, but like I found more value playing the utility lands, and it's felt better than playing Urza Saga. I don't know if you felt the same way or if you're just having fun with a non-saga list.
most of the time I'm like arguing that I'm having fun. It's a like it's I said this multiple times already. It's oddly refreshing not to play Saga and this like low to the ground, really like tacked out build where I have like I don't know 2 slots maybe main deck where I can experiment with. And also the mana base feels a lot better without the colorless lands and like lands randomly dying. So yeah, in like I didn't run Forgotten Cave. I always ran Barrenmoor because usually you have like black red and black green mana. And so black is just more flexible to cycle, at least in my opinion. So but I didn't run that for like not really sure August last year maybe. So I highly doubt you would run like a dedicated cycle land and the Triumph enchant.
Yeah, I think this will definitely help the saga builds because if you just go turn one tapped, fetch this on turn one, and then you just have all three mana plus
Yeah,
your saga, it helps a lot, at least from an Aslan perspective, because you can
yeah,
go.
yeah, I totally agree with that.
Mhm.
And it's also the other builds, like it's not especially Junt. Also something like Grixis is super mana intensive.
Mhm.
So if I'm not sure if Shadow would want to play this, probably not. Especially because it doesn't damage you. But like some sort of Grixis control definitely will pick up the. I'm not even sure what the name is. Uh, but let's just call it Grixis Triumph.
Yeah, and even like the Esper control one. Oh, sorry, Esper control would play the Esper Triome too, right? Like,
Yeah, definitely. So as all the control versions that like would emerge, definitely want to play Triumph.
mhm.
Not sure about the Naya one because like there isn't really a Naya control or even mid-range deck that would want to play this.
So this is again going off topic, but I've been like brewing like a little bit off stream of like a Naya saga list.
Yeah, me
Um,
too.
I just feel like it's been like so much potential before the new equipment, which we can get to later once we get to that card. But like, I felt like there's so much like potential between Ragavan, Esper Sentinel, and Ren and Six with Urza Saga. That's such a heavy hitting like mid range package that this again like maybe this Triumph will help smooth out that mana base as well. Um,
Yeah, probably.
yeah. Any final thoughts on
Not
the
sure.
Triumph? Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no, I think that they will see play and everybody will know that they will be good. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think we should spend too much time about talking about these because like we
Yeah.
don't need to hype them up.
No, I know that they're just all the. I mean, even people are like playing the other off color triumphs just for prismatic ending. Like they're just gonna see play. So,
Yeah, definitely.
um, so the next slide, or the next card is gonna be a card that I'm not very happy about, to be honest. It's Fleetfoot Dancer. It's one red, green, white. It's a elf druid 4/4 with trample, lifelink, and haste. And with all the rhinos that are in the set, why is this an elf? Like it has trample, it has lifelink. The flavor, like a rhino can be fast. Like why isn't this a rhino? I think this has just like triggered me when I saw this spoiled. When I like all the other rhinos in this set are like not even close to being playable. So
So flavor-wise, you would say this should be a rhino.
yes. 1000%.
Okay, but then I gotta argue, why would a Rhino lifelink?
I mean, why does Siege Rhino gain 3 life?
True. I'm also not sure why Citrana deals 3 damage, but
I mean, why
that's up for another
does
discussion.
a elf dancer gain life? Let's be real here.
Well, I think Elf lifelink is pretty flavorful. Trample not so much.
Yeah.
Haste also probably not so much. But anyways, what's your first impression of this card?
I feel like this card is like close. Like I feel like if this was printed like 3 years ago, this would be like a slam dunk, like great card. That if there's like a zoo list with there's those lists with Burning Tree Emissary and these kind of lists that curve out. Maybe it's like a nice top end with reach. I think this card just doesn't hit that power level anymore. Maybe it's also because of the Naya colors. Maybe there just isn't a home for this yet. But just a 4 mana, just general beater is kind of, I think, just not up to Modern's power level when everything is just so low to the ground still. I know Modern slowed down a little bit since Luris got banned, but if you compare something like this to other 4 drops like Omnath, like you're not going to. I guess they serve different purposes. One's trying to value while this is trying to race. But I still feel like this just doesn't cross the finish line enough to be modern playable, unfortunately. But what are your
I
thoughts?
kind of tend to agree that it's close, but probably not good enough. So I picked this card because I think all the 3 keywords are very relevant and very good.
Mm-hmm.
And also, what I thought about is that as a 4/4, being 4 mana, well, 4 mana is obviously a downside, but 4 mana dodges most of the time Prismatic Ending.
Mm-hmm.
And it dodges Bolt, it doesn't dodge Unholy Heat. But I think it dodges a couple of the commonly played removal
Mm-hmm.
that like you might just be able to get a couple of games with this card. It's obviously not a slam dunk as a 4-off or anything.
Mm-hmm.
And well, in a Zoo list, I think you will play this, like let's say 5-color Tribal Zoo. I think this is a very good top end for that kind of deck. And like I think it's close.
I think it being an elf and not being a human makes this a little bit harder. Like if this is a human, right? If you can curve out like turn 1 higher, turn 2 Mantis Rider, turn 3 Fleetfoot Dancer, I think you have something there. Because having multiple Mantis Rider effect, like how many times do you just lose to a top deck Mantis Rider? And like if you notice in Magic's history, whenever you have, sorry, so like when you have multiple of these like Mantis Rider effects or just multiple effects in general, like if you take for example, I'd like to use Mill as an example, where like once Mill got the crabs, like the second crab 5 through 8, that became a real deck. If you look at Storm, right when they got Brawl and Goblin Electromancer became a real deck. I feel like if you have multiple of these kind of really aggressive effects, it'd be nice. I don't know if you can if there's a zoo list with Mantis Rider and Fleetfoot Dancer, I think that's a little tough on the mana because in your 4 color. But I think it, but not being a human just makes it a little bit harder to have it see modern play.
Well, Tribal Zoo is already playing 5 mana, so for 5 colors.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think like this isn't actually very tough on the mana since it's one of each and a colorless. Like this would be way harder if it's actually like triple green or something along those lines. So I think like this is actually pretty easy splashable.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking at a perspective of like, are you gonna try to make zoo playable, which is a lot harder, or would you want to add this to humans, where humans already has all these other powerful cards that has already been proven to have maybe not recently, but had an impact in modern before, versus zoo has never had an impact in modern. So
Well, it was like 2 weeks maybe where Zoo was playable.
yeah.
I actually 5-0 with the list,
Oh,
playing Wild Nakatla in 2021.
oh, really? That's crazy.
You
um,
know, so I think this card is actually close, but not quite there,
yeah,
probably.
I agree.
But I think it's interesting that they're like so let's say slowly going towards like this impactful high CMC cards with a lot of keywords
Mm-hmm.
that like like this isn't busted or anything. Even let's say if it were like 3 mana 4/4, I think it still wouldn't be busted.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, but I'm not sure. I want to test this. Actually, I thought about
Really?
splashing one in Jund for a while,
Wow.
and I thought like this might be my top end maybe because we currently are missing very much the lifelink that Shadow Spear gave us.
Interesting. I mean, I've also like kind of thought about going for color and like splashing red for like Ren and six. And I guess from my perspective, I could easily splash red. I think it'd be easier for Absent to splash this card than it is for Jund, maybe. Or I guess it'd be both because we're both splashing a quaternary color for this. So I don't know. I just feel like, are you really gonna play this over something like Bloodbraid Elf? Do you really need that
Oh yeah,
lifelink?
definitely.
Really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Because so this is the first comparison that actually came to mind. Um, because like Bloodred Elf is obviously a 3/2 haster,
Mm-hmm.
which immediately can attack, but it doesn't actually stabilize the board. Like 3/2 doesn't trade with anything, at least like in the high CMC department.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can obviously trade with Ragavan, but I think that that's not the point to make. And like 4/4 can trade for a lot of things, and the lifelink is super relevant.
I guess I'm like, it's like, again, I feel like maybe this is just a bad comparison because nothing's going to compare to it. But I just feel like in the 4-drop slot, at least Bloodbraid Elf at least nets you another card potentially, similarly to On Math, right? This card just doesn't do that. I know you value the lifelink. Maybe I'm undervaluing the lifelink uh way more than you are.
But you are running Batterskull most of the time in Absan, or let's say in Absan Stoneblade lists,
Mm-hmm.
and like you just don't have this option in Jund anymore since like nobody plays Scavenging Ooze.
Hmm. So would you like
And like life, yeah, go ahead.
so would you like splash like the Mardu Triumph or something for this?
I thought about the Naya Triumph actually. So
Mm-hmm.
like going core black red,
Mm-hmm.
not black red, going core red green with Ren and six
Mm-hmm.
mostly, and then just splashing black and white for like removal and like this kind of stuff.
Hmm. I mean, I'm down to see it. I'm excited to see that whenever if you end up streaming that, because that'd be really interesting to see. Because like, if it
Oh, I
works
think
for
it's going
you,
to be crap.
I mean, if it works for you, it'll work for me, right? Like, we're kind of in the same, but we're kind of both have to splash this card. So,
Yeah, so true. Yeah, I'm not sure. Like, I'd like to see this card being played because I like the design.
yeah, it's definitely like a perfect power level. I feel like I just feel like Modern's gone too far from this. Where I feel like this is where Modern's power level should be. I think this card should be playable, and I feel like we're too far removed from that where we are right now with all the Horizon sets. But that's a topic for a different story. um,
Okay,
so let's go to the
should we
next
move
card.
on?
Yeah. Do you want to introduce this next card here?
I still have to wait until the stream shows it because I don't know what's the next card. Oh yeah, okay. Tenacious Underdog. So this is a 2 mana 3/2, which is a good quota, I want to say. And it has the Jund ability, the Riveteers ability, which is Blitz. Blitz basically says you can cast it for the Blitz cost, and it gains haste, and at the end of turn you have to sack it. But if you sack it, you draw a card. Oh no, if it dies, you draw a card. You don't have to sack it for the Blitz ability. And this has the additional effect that you can blitz it from the graveyard, so it's kind of a recurrable threat, like let's say Bloodghast, or I'm not sure the knight you can the 2/1 knight you can cast if you attack this turn, the raid one.
Blood Soak Champion,
So
I
this
think.
serves kind of the same purpose, where you have the well, help me out there, inability, that you always have a threat to card from the graveyard, basically, just for a couple of life.
Mm-hmm.
And with 3/2, like it trades for a lot of things. I think the body is like adequately sized for a 2 mana creature, and like it's nothing special. It probably won't be a 4 off, maybe if there is some sort of black-based, let's say, aggro version of a mid-range shell, probably not Shadow because those have other threats to go back on. I think this could see a little play. And what I thought about is actually with a card that comes later up is the new Nixilis that you can actually sack it and have value later on.
Yeah, I think this card reminds me of the mono black deck in Pioneer. I haven't paid attention to Pioneer in a very long time, so I don't know if mono black aggro is still a thing in that format. But like this card just screams that kind of like inevitability, like you mentioned, just that constant pressure. Like even if you have a single spot removal spell or even a lot of spot removal spells, like these just keep coming back. Um, it's interesting because when you cast this card, it doesn't really do anything. It's just a 2 minute 3/2. It's like you really
Yeah,
need
that's the
this in the
problem, I
graveyard.
think.
Yeah. So again, like when you mentioned like with the Nixilis card we'll get to later, like I think this is a card where you really need to build around. I don't see a current modern deck where you really want to play this because I feel like the decks that you self mill, for example, like you'd rather have like a Vengevine or something, right? That you bring back in masses.
Bloodcast or whatever you don't have to pay mana for.
Exactly. So like is there like a grindy mid-range deck that wants this kind of effect? Like I'm imagining like similar to like a Mardu mid-range shell that was in the past with like lingering souls and faithless looting where you can discard lingering souls and still get value. I feel like this is a type of card that would kind of fit in that shell, but unfortunately faithless looting is of course banned. So I feel like this card needs a shell that is probably not there right now, but I see the potential there just because just 4 mana aggressive, get 3 mana, like 3 damage in there, and then you essentially win the race, quote unquote, when you pay 2 life versus getting 3 damage in, and you get to draw a card. So it has a lot going for it. So I think the potential is there. It just needs to find the proper home.
I think the closest shell we have currently is something like John Sack.
That's a good one.
The problem is it's probably not better than any of the other threats currently played there.
I was thinking that too. Like, does that deck really want like a pay 4 mana draw card kind of effect? I feel like that card kind of or that deck kind of goes over the top. I don't know what you think.
It could probably be something like the fifth Bloodgast or anything along those lines. Or
Mm-hmm.
maybe Bloodgast 5 and 6 or something.
Mm-hmm.
It's probably not a 4 of,
Yeah.
and you probably don't even necessarily need it. It's just like a nice gimmick that you have the option to run it, I think.
Mm-hmm. I think the blitz costing 4 really caps it, and I agree with you that like maybe it's max like a 1 of maybe 2, because you can't really have multiples of these. Like once you have the first one, you're gonna sink all your most of all your mana into the first copy. So
8 mana, let's go.
yeah. We'll go to the next card here. It's Ziatora's Envoy. It's 1 black, red, green. It's a Viashino warrior. Viashino's are back, which is kind of cool. We've seen those in the past. It's a 5/4 trample, and it's whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you can look at the top card of your library. You may play a land from the top of your library or cast a spell with mana value less than or equal to the damage dealt from the top of your library without paying its mana cost. That's a lot of text. If you don't, put that card in your hand, and it has Blitz 2, black, red, green. So I guess this kind of competes with the Elf Dancer slot. But what are your thoughts on this? Because this is definitely something that's art is within your colors. So what are your thoughts?
Um, so first of all, I want to mention I don't think this is going to be good enough for modern, but I think it's also close,
Hmm.
like the same as the Fleetfoot Dancer. Um, so the best comparison is probably something like Bloodbred Elf, with it being a card advantage engine, probably.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Problem is, it doesn't immediately impact the board, so it doesn't have haste. It doesn't have like immediate card advantage, unless you of course blitz it, but then it's a one-time effect. Um, the good news about this card is like this ends the game in like 2 turns. Like you connect twice, and I think the game is over. It's a very big body actually. 5 power is like let's be real, we're playing modern. Everybody started like 13 life. So like 2 connections and a bolt, opponent is done for. And you gain advantage, a card advantage that you don't even have to pay for. Like you can just cast the cards for free unless they're like 6 drops, which I don't recommend running in modern unless you're playing Titan. So I think like this card just ends games very quickly. So it could be the finisher that some sort of, let's say, junk control, if there is a deck that's evolving into that, is going to use. Probably not something, so definitely not Jund Shadow, and probably not Jund Saga because you just can't pay the mana. Maybe mid range as a like substitution for Bloodbraid Elf. Not sure on that one because there are like a lot of other 4 drops that are actually competing for that slot now. With fail modes built in, I want to say like something like Croxer. And yeah, I'm not sure. I think I find it hard to evaluate this card.
I don't know if you. I don't think you'll agree with me on this, but I think this is a little more playable than the Elf Dancer card, just because of
Really?
inevitability. Yeah, because the Blitz is just so good. Like it forces. Like I know there's a lot of maybe Solitude definitely puts a wrinkle in this, but like if this gets Furied, you just Blitz it next turn. And like it fights through Fury. You'll trample over, get your card, it'll die, and then you just blitz it again, and then you just blitz. Like it's, I feel like this card just is
I
constant.
think I'm not sure if you evaluate Blitz correctly in this case because it dies once you blitzed it.
Yeah, and then you just blitz it again. Oh, but you can't blitz it from the graveyard. I'm confusing it with the zombie. I'm sorry. Then never mind. I
Well,
take back
then
everything I
this card
said.
would be busted.
Yeah. I apologize. I was confusing with the zombie. I thought that card ability was on every card. My bad. Then never mind. I take back everything I said. This card is unplayable.
I'm sorry, it was a little much. I think it's like if it were if it had greater recursion, definitely it would
Yeah.
be a slam dunk. Because it just gives you the late game no matter what.
It's
Just
that.
like Croxer, let's say.
Yeah. I guess that's where I was thinking of. I thought that the repeatability, which I guess that's why I think the black was going to, but I just assumed that was on all of it. I guess what happens when you
Well,
have the keyword and don't explain it on the bottom with new cards.
yeah, so you can't blitz from the graveyard. Just a public service announcement. And what's the if you, so let's say you top deck this and like you want to get in some damage, like this replaces itself and gets a new card and put in 5 damage. Would you pay 5 mana to deal 5 and draw 2 cards?
Yeah, you would.
So if you would do that, this card is playable.
I guess I'm just trying to recalibrate my, I guess, power level of this card, and I feel like 5 mana is just a lot, and I guess that goes back to your point where it's just kind of expensive for what you're trying to do. Because like it's still, like you said, it's still 4 mana 5/4 that doesn't have an immediate effect. Like you just have a body.
Like the same principle that I brought up before with the other 4-drop still applies here. It dodges Bolt and it dodges most of the time Prismatic Ending. So like it at least checks those boxes. If you get this unholy heated, well, sucks.
Yeah.
But like pretty much every threat that you would run dies to unholy heat.
Yeah, that's fair.
So bad luck, I'd say.
I,
Yeah, but if you evaluate like the portion where you could draw 2 cards of 5 mana, or potentially draw 2 cards of 5 mana, like let's be real. If you blitz this and it dies to a removal spell, well, pretty much every other card you would be able to draw also wouldn't have done anything. So Yeah. I think it's hard to evaluate this card. Like, I want to test it. I also think it's not going to be good enough. But I could be wrong. Like, I think this is also close, and so close that it's hard to tell or impossible to tell if it's gonna end up in modern.
I mean, at least for this one, you want the splash of a different color for it compared to the dancer, right? So it'd be interesting to see.
Maybe, yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah.
And it's also like, so I view every fair deck is probably a spectrum. So there's no clear, like, this is aggro, this is mid range, this is control. It is more of a spectrum, and this goes more towards a controlling side of a spectrum. Whereas something like, let's say, Dragon Rage Channeler, also a fair card, obviously, but this is definitely more of an aggressive like type of deck that it goes into. So if there is some Junt or 4-color control ish deck, you definitely would want to look at this.
Do you want to go to the next card here?
Yeah, I think we can move on.
If you want to introduce this card.
Give me a second. There we go. So this is the no, this isn't the Esper Charm, but this is the Esper Abrupt Decay. People are gonna call it. So this is Void Rend. Costs 1 of each Esper mana, white, blue, and black. It can't be countered. It is an instant, and it destroys target non-land permanent. So best comparison is probably something like Vindicate, I think. So my initial evaluation of this card was Vindicate doesn't see any play whatsoever. So this wouldn't see play also, in my opinion. The subtle difference is, though, this is an instant, and I think this is more relevant than it being uncountable. Like, it's the same with like Abrupt Decay and Assassin's Trophy. The uncountable part is most of the time not what's making the difference. So this being an instant compared to Vindicate could make this card just good enough for modern. Just not as a 4-off, of course, but like a solid 2-off, let's say, in something like Esper Control. That, like, Esper has good removal already, but could struggle against something like Planeswalkers most of the time. Like, you of course have Prismatic Ending, but like, this is an instant and costs probably the same mana to remove a Planeswalker. So maybe this is going to see play. I think it's hard to evaluate, for me at least, on this one.
I think this card is close. I think people, maybe my perception is what people are saying on Twitter, but I think this card is overrated based on what I'm seeing. I think this is really, really expensive for what you're trying to do. And like you brought up the comparison of like Vindicate, Maelstrom Pulse. I feel like 3 mana is a lot for a singular spot removal spell, especially in modern right now. That being said, I do think that maybe this is a potential one of, maybe in the sideboard at least, just because of the fact that like if you are staring down a Teferi in the control mirror and your control opponent has like 6 cards in hand, and like this card will answer the Teferi on the board. So I see like merit behind this card as in those type of situations where it does dig you out of that spot potentially. That being said, if your opponent has a bunch of counter magic in hand, you're probably maybe potentially win the game anyway. But I think those are the situations where you probably want this card, or when you're against like Murktide, you want to kill it through a counter spell. I see spots like that where this has applicability with the uncounterability ability attached to it. But that being said, still 3 mana, and like Absent doesn't play Vindicate, Rock and Jund doesn't play Milestone Pulse. The reason for that is just 3 mana is just too much. Like you need more mileage out of a spot removal spell like a Liliana, where you sack a creature and you have a planeswalker in play. Like I feel like you need to get more mileage out of the mana you spend into it in these type of removal spells. But that's kind of my thought process on it. I don't think it's like a 4 or anything. I think it's maybe one of, at least in the sideboard, maybe one in the main. Maybe you do like a split. So
I can see that. So my initial thought is this being an instant gives you the option like you can just end of turn this unless there's a Teferi, of course. But let's not assume the worst for you all the time. And given that this is most likely a Esper control shell, it is being ran in. Like you have a bunch of instant speed interaction. You have counter spells. You have, let's say, Riveteers Charm, which functions as counter spell and draw to. You most of the time run Esper Charm. So you have a bunch of draw go potential. And this being instant speed is just way better than Vindicate would be, or even Prismatic Ending would be for that kind of shell. So you might not be wrong with like one or two of, but I think it will end up like maybe one in the side, but one main, as you mentioned. So my guess would be this will see play in if there is Esper control being viable, which is questionable because like I think at the moment there's only like 4-color and blue-white splashing, like red and green for a prismatic ending.
I mean, they also get a Triome too, so this may be bridging the gaps here. And I
Yeah, it
don't know.
could be.
Yeah. So the next card is, I don't know if you are excited about this card, but I am excited for these Jund players because I feel like this is definitely a card that is very comparable to Kaya's Guile. So it's Riveteers Charm. It's Jund mana, black, red, green. You choose one. Target opponent sacrifices a creature or planeswalker they control with the highest mana value among creatures and planeswalkers they control. Exile the top 3 cards of your library. Until your next turn, you may play those cards. And, or, sorry, you only get to choose one. Or you get to exile target player's graveyard. So there's a lot of modality in this card. Um, there's a lot of spots where this card is absolutely better than Kaya's Guile. For example, if you are against Amulet, and they have like an Arboreal Razor in play, like you can make them sack the Primeval Titan. This makes them sack Planeswalkers. So if you're against Control, they sack a Teferi or a big Teferi Jace. This has the potential to end step cast a Riveteers Charm, untap, uh, and you get to play 3 cards. So this is like a better divination. You get to essentially draw 3. The only mode where you kind of lose out is when you just have the exile target player's graveyard mode, where essentially, like from Kaya's Guile, you get to get an extra mode on top of that. Um,
I see.
so I know.
So
Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, let's maybe quickly pick up the comment that was in the chat that Kaya Skull is still the best reason to be Esper. That's true, and if Kaya Skull becomes a modern staple again, I think the Void Rend will just increase in value.
That's true.
Because currently Kaya Skull is kinda meh.
Yeah, definitely since Loris got banned, Kaya's Guile is definitely not. The stock on Kaya's Guile has dropped a little bit for sure.
Yeah. Okay, back to Riveteers Charm. So let's evaluate the last mode first, I think, because that's the like least amount of text to interpret. Um, if you need the Graveyard Exile mode, you happily pay 3 mana for it.
Mm-hmm.
So it also the old Jund Charm also had the same mode, by the way. So yeah, if you need it, you happily pay 3 mana for it.
So
And probably the default mode is draw 3 or pseudo draw 3. And also what I want to bring up here, it says until the beginning of your next end step. So in theory, you could cast this in your own end step. Let's just say your opponent has tapped out and has a bunch of counter magic. You can't just do this on your turn and still have the cards on your next turn.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a slight upside. It doesn't say at the beginning of the next end step. which is usually how these cards are going to be worded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is just going to be the default mode. Like, let's say Archmage's Charm also has a default mode draw too, and the others are just like nice to have, but usually not being used.
Mm-hmm.
And you kind of want a low to the ground deck with this, I feel like, because like you at most have 4 mana on the turn this goes off. So let's just say you hit 2/3 drops, like you will never be able to cast those. So a bunch of 2 and 1 drops should be in your chant deck if you run this.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, you could also just send back those. Like there's no reason. It's the same with Expressive Iteration. Let's say you are not forced to play this on turn 2. Like find a land and find something else. Like there's not a rule. And it's the same here. You can't just like do your John stuff and like continue on with your game and then like turn 6 um, go for the draw 3 mode. And it's also like a very good top deck. Like in the top deck war, this is just way better than Blood Breath ever would be. It's also nice in like let's say with Lily that you don't draw the cards. Like you just exile them and Lily can go ham on their cards on their hand. So yeah, I think this card is overall okay. I don't want to say it's busted or very good. It's not like it's clearly not modern breaking modern or anything. It's still a 3 mana instant that like draws you 3 at best. And like the first mode, I think the first mode is kind of like the counterspell mode on Archmage's Charm. That like if you have to use it, you will do so, but you never want to because like it's the same with Archmage's Charm. It's a 1-for-1, whereas the other mode is just a card advantage, like card advantage mode, either drawing 2 or stealing a permanent of them. And it's the same here. Like let's just assume that exiling player's graveyard is a huge card advantage engine for you. Let's say against Dredge is like like you can't really count how many cards they would have had of the graveyard. So definitely more than one, I want to say.
So I think this card is really good. I think this is a slam dunk. You're probably gonna play 2 main and be really, really, really happy with it. I know people were comparing this to Kolagon's command as well because it is kind of in the same slot. And I think that might just be a meta call in terms of like if there's more hammer, you probably want to play Kolagon's command because you want the shatter effect. But when I compare this to Kaya's Guile, people are like, "Oh, Kaya's Guile is better because you get to pick 2 modes." And I understand that, but I feel like would you rather have quality or quantity? And I feel like the quality of this charm is just a lot better. I know there's a lot of stream like when I watch your stream a couple times where you play against Living End or Dredge. I feel like you're like I'm just gonna lose game one, and this card just like gives you at least some game against that deck, right? If you look at something like Cascade Rhinos, where I main deck a Kaya's Guile, they just sack a Shardless agent and they don't care, but they sack a relevant Rhino with the sack ability. I know you mentioned in terms of like curving out, like, oh, do you want to play this on turn 3? You want to have a lower curve. But I feel like if you're going to be casting this on turn 3, you're going to be killing a creature with this card, which is great utility, right? And then if you have this on turn 4 or turn 5, then you do the exile 3 cards effect, similar to Archimedes Charm, right? Like I feel like Archimedes Charm, you're countering the first, usually your first effect, and then you draw 2 as like your second copy. So I feel like this just has a lot of utility, and if it's a card that like flips your bad matchups without sacrificing your good ones, I think it's something to really have a second look at. And against something like Dredge Living End, this card gives you very well, huge percentage points against those decks game one, while also not sacrificing your other matchups. And arguably, this card is also good against your good matchups as well.
I tend to agree. I want to add that it's kind of hard to cast with being 3 mana and compared to Kaya's Guile at least.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like the John Triumph will help on that one, but still, like 3 mana on turn 3 or 3 colors on turn 3. Especially if you intend to run Saga, is going to be tough.
Yeah, I guess if you were to play this in a saga, I guess you wouldn't play this in a saga list because the mana
I'm not
would be
sure
too
actually
much.
if you wouldn't.
I mean, if saga is any one of your land drops, if you're unless you're playing Urborg, you literally can't cast this until turn 4.
Well, that doesn't hinder people from running like terrible mana bases, like double red, double black with Saga. Not pointing fingers here, but it might be an MTGO user named Aspiring Spike. So if people were running those kind of lists and they were kind of working, I think you would run like 3 colors plus Saga in your deck. And like it's not, you don't even have to play this on turn 3. Like this is still good on turn 4 as a removal, turn 5 as a removal if you
Absolutely.
need it. But then it's just not a 3 or 4 off. Like 2 off I think is fine. Maybe without Saga you would want to run like 3. Definitely I think 4 is too much for this kind of effect. Um, because it comes kind of with the text. If you hit a second one with the exile effect, you're kind of screwed. But like you can use the trick I mentioned at the beginning. Just exile it and use it in the beginning of your end step. So yeah, a lot of play to this card, and I think the default mod just draw 3 is like 3 mana draw 3 is way overkill. Like divination is a 3 mana draw 2 at sorcery speed. Like I think this card is good and we'll see play, but I don't think it would break modern again.
Yeah, I don't. I think it's awkward because I feel like if I compare it to Archmage's Charm, which we've been doing so far, it technically draws you or gives you more look at more cards. But I feel like Archmage's Charm, there's decks that run 4, like in the Charming Rhinos deck, versus I agree with you that this is probably a max like a 2 of, in the main at least. And in Sagalist, probably just 1, just because the mana is a lot tougher. I guess it's just there's just so many high impactful Jund cards like Kolaghan's Command that it's also competing against. I still feel like I would want this over the Kolaghan's Command, just maybe based on the current meta because Living End is so popular right now and Hammer's on the decline. But even then, like I feel like if you're gonna have 2 slots dedicated to this, you would just do a 1-1 split.
Yeah, maybe. Could be.
Yeah. So
I
on to
think
the
that's it about Riveteers Charm, right?
yeah. So you want to talk about the next card here?
Yeah, so we briefly mentioned this earlier. So this is Ob Nixilis, the Adversary. It's a new Planeswalker, black and red. 1 black, 1 red, 1 colorless. It's obviously a Nixilis. Um, I will mention the causality later because that's the mechanic of the Grixis shard. It's a 3 loyalty Planeswalker. It has +1. Each opponent loses 2 life unless they discard a card. And if you control a demon or devil, you gain 2 life. Just heads up, I don't think this is ever going to happen. Create -2, create a 1/1 red devil creature. When this creature dies, it deals 1 damage to any target. So this is basically enabling the first ability. And -7, target player draws 7 cards and loses 7 life. So you could either kill your opponent or kill your opponent by drawing cards. And now to the mechanic. Causality basically means you sack a creature with the power, minimum the power that's required. So usually it's causality 1 to whatever. This is causality X. And so you can sack any power and you get a copy of this Planeswalker that has, I think, the same amount of loyalty as the sacrifice creature. So if you sack a 2-power creature, you get a copy that has 2 loyalty. And basically this means you can just sack whatever creature you have access of and get a second of Nixilis. That isn't legendary, by the way, because otherwise would be pretty useless mechanic on this card. And so my first thought, and I want to make this like the starting point. This card is not modern playable unless you're going to use the causality pretty much each and every time. So
So
yeah,
I
that's my initial thought.
I saw someone go, "Oh yeah, I could sacrifice my Tarmogoyf for this. I have two Ob Nixilis," and I was like, "You do not want to sacrifice a Tarmogoyf to this. You really don't. I feel like you really need to build around this card. Like you mentioned, the 2-drop, the 2-mana 3/2 that you can blitz from the graveyard. I feel like you need these kind of sacrifice effects where it's a 3-powered creature, so you can make a copy of Ob Nixilis, sack that, and then -2 to protect it, and then you have 2/1/1 devils and 2 planeswalkers in play on turn 3. That's kind of like the upside. I think I
Okay,
might
okay.
go ahead.
Hear me out. Hear me out. You blitz the Viashino, you connect for 5, you cast Ob Nixilis off the top for free, sacrifice the Viashino, you draw a card, and you get another Ob Nixilis with 6 loyalty.
I, I think that card is not going to work in this show. You're not going to curve out like that.
Okay, we have a downer. We have a downer over there.
It's just going to be.
Anyways, yeah. So you definitely want to abuse the ability, yeah. So Chun Sack comes to mind, I think. Because if you're just gonna use this card in a fair way, I think it's just not going to work.
No.
Like even if you have something like the boxer, don't even remember the name to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
The blitz from graveyard creature. If you're just going to use it +1, deal your opponent 2, I think that's just not good enough. And also making 1/1s that like deal 1, who cares about that? So you need to abuse those kinds of effects. You need to make use of 1/1s. Like let's say sack them into Grist or something. Anything along those lines. And you definitely want to have a lot of like dice effects in those kind of shells. And I think John Sack comes to mind. I'm not sure if this is some like Grixis Sack kind of engine. Maybe the Thopter Foundry Anvil decks could maybe use this. I'm not sure if they benefit from any of those kind of effects. So yeah, you definitely want to abuse the kind of effect. What came up in chat is that you can play this in Shadow and like hit your opponent for 13 with the Shadow, then sack the Shadow, and immediately out the new Nixilis and to kill your opponent from 20. So Grixis Shadow, let's say you drop Shadow, you drop Dress Down, and then you drop Nixilis. That's the sweet one hit, but I'm not sure if that's the shell you want to use it for.
I think it's definitely probably the easiest way to get ultimate, right? I know there is like we were playing around the Discord with that green card that's like an 8/0, and you can like
Yeah,
Force of Savagery, I think it's called.
yeah. I used to play the card.
Yeah, so like you have some sort of like anthem effect, and then you play it, and then you just sack it to this, and you insta ultimate, which is a lot more steps than just playing a Death Shadow. It's kind of in the same vein. Um,
Well, so you're gonna play an Anthem. Let's just assume you're gonna use a 2-mana Anthem and not be a retard and use a 3-mana Anthem.
mhm.
You play Force of Savagery, that's 5 mana. Then you play Obnixilis, that's 8 mana, and then you use it to draw 7. And lose 7 life. So there is a black 7-drop that draws half your library for half your life. It doesn't use 3 cards.
I mean, it's just like playing around with a planeswalker that potentially has the ability to ultimate the way the turn it comes in. Like, and it's an actual ultimate. It's not like a Gideon's emblem or whatever, where you just like it's like an anthem. Like, it's like a true like win the game ultimate. Like this card, I feel like has a lot of potential. You definitely have to build around it. Like you mentioned, definitely have to have sack effects. Maybe this is like a one of Ingrix's Death Shadow, just because it does pressure. Like it's still up. The +1 still is. It's kind of a Punisher effect where you still have your opponent either choose to discard or lose two, but still pressures, right?
I guess. I'm just not seeing this card in a mid range shell.
Oh yeah, I definitely think get the build around it, which I don't think would be a mid range. Well, I guess unless you consider Jun Sack or Rakno Sack as a mid range shell, I definitely think like that kind of sacrifice deck would run this card.
Yeah, totally. I would argue that Jansak is a combo deck. It's
Interesting,
it's permanent base combo.
interesting. Because even like if you just curve out cast this on three with no uh just no creature in board, just minusing getting a 1/1, and that also just has double the effect of Goblin Bombardment. Because like you see board states where you have Goblin Bombardment and oh my god, the 3 mana 3/3 that
And that
yeah, Mayhem Double. When you have like two of these effects where you get to deal 2 damage for each sacrifice, that it adds up. And the fact that
Yeah, totally. I agree on that part.
mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, but you have to abuse the 1/1 for something. Like using this a fair way is just not doing it.
Oh yeah. Like if you're asking like if this fits in like a regular Jun mid range shell, I don't think so.
I could see it like maybe with Season Pyromancer, where first of all you can discard it to like make value out of a 3-drop that's otherwise useless, and you can sack the Season Pyromancer itself for the casualty. So
Even
that's the only shell I could envision this being used in a fair way.
hmm. I feel like then you're just like really lowering the ceiling on this card.
You basically want to go ham, like ultimate immediately, or just like throw stuff at your opponent until he's dead,
Yeah, exactly.
and nothing in between.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can get behind that, and I don't disagree.
Yeah.
I think this card is a little bit overhyped. So I've heard a lot of like let's say statements that this card is totally busted because you can sack your Tarmogoyf and stuff like that. And I don't think that's the case at all. I think
Yeah.
this card is just it's a niche card that will find its shell,
Mm-hmm.
but not a new modern staple.
So I guess a card that we can kind of compare is like Grist, where Grist is a card in Yawgmoth where it's really good. Like it's maximizing its ceiling on that card. We have undying creatures. You can sacrifice a creature and kill a dude, and you don't lose a creature once you use a removal mode. Um, but I feel like the floor on Grist is so high, you could jam it into Rock, into Jund, into Abzan, and be okay. Like the card is decent enough as just you can just have it as just a value engine. And I don't think this Nixilis is on that level of flexibility. I feel like you need to build around it a little bit more compared to Grist.
Some people brought up that you can search for Grist, obviously, and you can't search for this. This is a huge advantage for Grist, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
that it's a creature in the deck.
Mm-hmm.
Another thing is that Grist generates card advantage while plussing,
Mm-hmm.
and Obnixilis doesn't do that. Like the damage only matters if you kill your opponent,
Yep, I agree.
and it's the same like with like the fairy obviously has other applications, but it's the same. The fairy doesn't generate any card advantage with plussing,
Mm-hmm.
and like it's also a 3-mana planeswalker.
Mm-hmm.
And like Grist is first of all Grist is removal, which is super valuable. Obnixilis doesn't remove anything unless it dies to a 1/1, um, which let's be real won't happen that often.
Yeah.
Um, and plus doesn't necessarily generate card advantage unless the opponent wants you to,
Mm-hmm.
if they have crap in hand.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a 3-mana planeswalker that does protects himself like kind of okay with the 1/1. You can at least jump block once,
Mm-hmm.
but it doesn't win the game necessarily by itself.
Mm-hmm.
Like you need 10 turns to finish your opponent, even more if they choose to discard something.
Mm-hmm.
And if they don't draw anything within 10 turns to deal with this up next as well, you deserve the win, but then even a 1-1 would have won you the game eventually.
Mm-hmm. I know.
Yeah, and all the chat brought it up that giving your opponent a choice is always like, not where you want to be.
Yeah.
That's also a reason why you don't see Vexing Devil like being a modern staple,
Mm-hmm.
or
Like,
Bobby for that matter.
yeah, if you compare something like Chandra Torch of Defiance, where you get to choose if you want to play the card or if you just want to shock your opponent. This is like the opposite effect, where you get your opponent to choose. So I definitely agree that like these Punisher effects are always worse than it seems on paper.
Yeah. That rightfully pointing out that it's taking less than 10 turns, but that wasn't the point I was trying to make. You're gonna reach ultimate obviously first and then kill your opponent with dealing 7, but
Mm-hmm.
that wasn't the point I was trying to make. But Chad, you're right. Obviously, you're right.
So we can go on to the last card, unless you have any other last thoughts here. On Ob
No, I
Nixilis.
think we could put up Nixilis.
Okay. So this is the last card in my presentation. I don't know if there's any other cards we want to go over after, but we can just delve into that after. But this is, I'm probably going to pronounce the name wrong, but it's Luxior, Giada's Gift. This has a lot of combo potential. A lot of people are hyped up about this card. It's 1 mana, legendary artifact equipment. Equipped creature gets +1/+1 for each counter on it. You can equip a planeswalker for 1 or equip a creature for 3. Equipped permanent isn't a planeswalker and is a creature in addition to its other types. So the first potential combo that people were talking about was Devoted Druid. So you go Devoted Druid on 2, Luxior on 3, equip it, and then you have infinite mana. There's also shells where I've seen where it has Urza Saga where you can tutor for it. I've seen shells where you can just splash Ren in 6, where it's the cheapest planeswalker. It goes up to 4. By the time you equip this, it can go up to 5. And then you can attack with a 5/5, which is a pretty aggro plan as well. This card has been very, very hyped up. And I honestly don't know how I feel about it. I feel like I'll wake up and I'll be like, this card is gonna be great in that shell. There's gonna be other times I wake up and I'm like, well, the Devoted Druid combo is so fragile and doesn't see play anymore. So I'm like kind of torn because the potential shell that I see that I actually do want to try, and it's not going to be an Abzan deck, is a Naya shell that Spider Space came up with. Where it has Stoneforge Mystic, Urza Saga, Devoted Druid, has Finale, and then it has Ren and 6. And that's kind of the shell. You could potentially add Ragavan, just have cards that attract a removal, so then your Devoted Druid is protected. It can run Giver of Ruins. And then just as a backup mid-range package, you have Urza Saga, Ragavan, Stoneforge Mystic, Cauldron. Like this, it has a lot going for it. So like I feel like I'm torn. I feel like I just need to try it and see if it has any legs. And again, I'm just like I feel like one day I'll be like this card's great, and other days I'll get like, well, the Devoted combo isn't played. So I don't know how I feel about this deck. All right.
It's so funny. I have exactly the same shell rolled up and in my mind that you have a functional mid-range shell with a one of Luxior and a one of Viridian Longbow that can be both found by Stoneforge Mystic and Urza Saga
Mm-hmm.
and randomly combo your opponent to death.
Mm-hmm.
It's like obviously other people also have found this interaction,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's kind of a solid start. Because the problem with Devoted Druid is there is no plan B. If your Devoted Druid dies, like what are you gonna do? 2-1 beatdown?
Mm-hmm.
Or like I'm not sure if like you had no plan B. You had a bunch of tutors for the Devoted Druid, and if you don't get to untap, you're basically dead.
Mm-hmm.
And having like the option to play a fair game, just like Saga your opponent to death or what have you, Caldra, you mentioned it, I think is so good. And this random go infinite combo. I used to play a Kiki card shell with like a bunch of value cards, like Tireless Tracker, obviously the walls that Wall of Omen, like stuff like that. And you basically you value your opponent to a point where they have to commit something, and then you're gonna combo them. Like court end of turn for Venifer and just kill them. Something along those lines. Like this kind of playstyle, where it's I'm always comparing this to like I'm not sure if you are familiar with like how obviously you know how chess works, but if you're familiar with like how top level chess currently works and that Magnus Carlsen is dominating everything, and he always like it's always said that he can squeeze water from a stone. So he's grinding positions for like hours to get like a slight incremental advantage. And this is how I view these kind of combo shells. You grind as long as your opponent, like as soon as he stumbles a little bit, you just kill them. And I think that this could be a shell where this Luxior is very good at. And I'm not sure if you're gonna use this in a let's quote unquote fair way. So if let's say you run Saga, let's say in John Saga, you run Ren and 6 and Lily and then just beat your opponent to death with those two. I'm not sure if you wanna do that. If you wanna spend a whole slot in your deck, then otherwise pretty useless artifact.
I feel like maybe since both of us are mid-range players, maybe that's why that kind of build appeals to us, because there's always spots where you're behind, like combo decks, you're behind, but the fact that you don't have a zero outer is means a lot. And I feel like in mid-range shells, when we play, like, we have outs, but like that's outs to stabilize, not outs to literally win the game. um I think this is something comparable to an Abzan list that I played in Pioneer, actually, before Walking Ballista got banned. And I think it goes comparable to your chess kind of comparison, where it's a traditional Thoughtseize. It was Grimflare at the time, because there's Tarmogoyf. There's no Tarmogoyf in Pioneer. It's like Thoughtseize, Grimflare, Tireless Tracker, all the removal spells, Fatal Push, Nissa, Liliana, and then it had a Traverse package. And when the coast is clear, you traverse for a Heliod or a Ballista, and you combo and kill your opponent. It's not all in like the mono white versions at the time, but it was nice having that backdoor combo win in board states, or in just in matchups where it's just so hard, where you can't outgrind your opponent, when like Uro was legal. And I feel like I get that same vibe with this card, where and just the potential shells, because you throw a Ragavan at your opponent, they have to deal with it. You throw a Stoneforge at your opponent, they have to deal with it. And it's like, if they don't deal with like your first Ragavan or your second Stoneforge Mystic, you're going to win the game anyway. And if you don't, you throw Saga at them, you throw Constructs at your opponent. If they go through all that, you slam a Devoted Druid, and then you combo. Like, there's just so much that your opponent has to interact with, that it's asking for a lot, and that's kind of the ceiling on these kind of shells that have a lot of appeal, at least to me, because like you don't have to combo as your primary game plan. I feel like I've tried decks like Yawgmoth, where they're a combo deck, and it's like it's not as appealing to me. But I feel like these kind of shells, where you're a mid-range deck one, backup combo deck two, like that's a lot more fun to me, and I think that's where I'm gonna have a lot more fun exploring this deck for sure.
I think the main problem is that the Water Druid is still a very crappy card.
Yes.
Like it doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I just pointed out in the chat, like Twin back then, where you grind this long and then just kill your opponent.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier with the Kiki card deck. Where you can always combo, but you never have to.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the same with some sort of Naya. It's debatable if it's gonna end up like Naya mid range or Naya Devoted Druid, whatever you're gonna call it.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it's a very solid start, because obviously Stormforge and Saga both slot in very nicely in those kind of shells.
Mm-hmm.
Again, the main problem is that Devoted Druid is just not a good card. It's a O2 that dies to everything, and it doesn't even have a useful effect.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you're not gonna need the additional mana in those kind of shells.
Mm-hmm. And it's not just Devoted Druid. Like, If you have an opening hand of like this Viridian Longbow and Devoted Druid, like these are all combo pieces that don't do anything on their own, right? So you kind of need to lean on drawing your in mid-range cards to, throw at your opponent to clear the way for your combo pieces, right? Because like the Devoted Druid doesn't really pair well with Ragavan. Like these combo pieces plus the Radiant Shield doesn't really pair together. But then if you're all in on the combo, then you already have the Vizier Devoted Druid combo, and that obviously again hasn't seen play. So it's like it's a weird spectrum, and it's just like it's gonna be interesting to see when the dust settles if this deck ends up being playable. Like how mid rangey are you gonna be versus how combo heavy are you going to be?
So in my first draft, I'm down to one Luxior, I'm down to one Viridian Longbow, four Sagas for Stoneforge,
Mm-hmm.
and four Devoted Druid. So this was my first starting point.
Mm-hmm.
And then just a bunch of mid-range cards like Ragavan, like Ren and Six, like other targets for Stoneforge.
Mm-hmm.
Basically full on mid-range plus four Devoted Druid.
Mm-hmm.
So in an interesting thought experiment, would this deck be better if Green Sun's Zenith existed? Because you could go down to one Devoted Druid and have a card that could get something like Tarmogoyf on default. And if you are ready to combo, get the Devoted Druid.
I don't think so. Just because the Green Sun Zenith doesn't get your other combo piece.
Yeah, I would agree, and that's it's not necessarily the Green Sun Zenith, but all the other current tutor packages at creature tutors. You can't search these artifacts, and that's the main downside. So if you were to go for creature tutors, you should run one ballista and one vizier again, and then you have a bunch of cards again that don't really do anything. So if you were to go to build this kind of mid-range shell, you should just run one of the two artifacts into the four devoted druids to have like 6 slots that kind of suck in your deck.
Well, it's why I think Finale is going to be really good in the deck because it tutors for Druid and combos with Druid. So I think Finale is kind of like that glue that holds that deck together.
So would you run? So you still would run Viridian Longbow, right?
Yeah.
As a one-off.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah, maybe. I'm not sure. Like the problem is that Finale is just also not a very good card. Like obviously you can do 4 mana search out your Stoneforge. But it's again a card that's most of the time dead, and you kind of want to avoid that in a mid-range shell.
I mean, I guess that's where like gradient comes, where it's like how mid range versus you want to be versus how combo do you want to be, right? Like you could also just not have any tutor effects, but I feel like that's not playing it safe outside of Stoneforge and Saga. Like you'd also do that too, but I think being able to tutor up the Devoted Druid with Finale is potential as well.
I can see that. Like time will tell. People will definitely like. This is no secret that this combos with the Devoted Druid, and people will try this.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm like hyped is a little bit of an overstatement, but let's say excited to see lists running this.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I don't think you want to do this in a fair way. Like, let's say
No.
Tron, you don't want to do like run over with your Khan. Like Khan is gonna win the game by itself.
You know someone's gonna do that though, right? You know someone's gonna do
Definitely.
that. You know someone's gonna have Karn minus get this out of their sideboard and then suit up their own Karn. You know someone's gonna do that.
Question in the chat: did we talk about Vivien? We did not, but we can do this after we finish the cards we prepared. I think.
Well, this is the last one, so I can pull up the Vivien if you want me to. If you
Yeah,
unless there's
let's do
any
that
last slots.
because I think Vivien also has like I know that Vivien goes infinite with something. So you also could run that in modern. The problem is I think like Vivien is just it's 6 mana just being way too expensive.
So let me pull it up here. It wasn't in my PowerPoint, so apologies. But let's. How does that look? So the Vivien this is the Vivien that we were talking about, right? It's the 6
Yeah, the
mana.
new one. So
Mhm.
there's only one Vivien in the set, I think.
So it's 4 green. It's +2. You may sacrifice a creature. If you do, search your library for a creature card with mana value equal to 1 plus a sacrificed mana value. So it's literally a birthing pod. Mill 5 cards, put any number of creature cards mill this one into your hand. It's a +1 ability, and then -1 make a 4/4 Rhino Warrior token. So what's the combo that you're referring to?
So I'm not aware of the name of the card, but there is a red card that puts planeswalkers from your hand into play, and you sack them end of turn. I think it's a 3-drop. So red 3-drop. I think one red tap, or maybe just one red. Put a planeswalker from your hand onto the battlefield. So basically, Elfish Piper for planeswalkers, and then you sack this creature to get the Guardian, the Fielder Guardian, blink the Vivien, and search up. Oh yeah. So chat pointed out. So it's plainbound accomplice that puts the planeswalker onto battlefield. You go Vivien, you search up Felida, you blink the Vivien, you sack the Felida at the Guardian, Karmic Guide, and then go Kiki Infinite. So this is a 2-card combo that kind of slots into, let's say, something like Kiki Core. Problem is that Vivien kind of sucks without the card. Like 6 mana is so much in Modern, and obviously the effects are good, and you would want to run those, but you're not willing to pay 6 mana. And also the -1 is kind of crappy.
Yeah, I guess if you're gonna be all in on the combo, you're just gonna play 4 plain bound 4 Vivien and just hope you get there right. Play 4 Oath and Nissa and just like kind of go all in on it. I feel like.
Sure.
Like I feel like this like if you're again back to the spectrum, I feel like you're gonna go all in on the combo and you're not gonna be expecting to hard cast this.
Yeah, but like the problem that all of those birthing pod combos have, you don't need you're not so either you run multiple of the targets, or you're not allowed to draw them at all. Like this, the combo doesn't work if you have one of the combo pieces in hand.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, maybe you just run 2 of each and then 4 plain bound 4 Vivien, and then
But if you run like this is the same problem that Kiki Court had. If you run 2 of each, you're not gonna you are less likely to draw all of them, but you're also more likely to draw crappy cards.
I mean that's I think that's kind of why you have to walk the line of like how all in on the combo are you going to be, right? Like if you draw your crappy combo cards, that's kind of what you get when you play this type of build, right? I feel like if you're going to I feel like maybe you're coming from like the Kiki core perspective where like, oh, it's a toolbox deck, and it's like I think you have to take that perspective out and then just go there, you're all in on a combo, right?
Another question I gotta ask with regards to Vivien, why would you run the 6 mana Planeswalker over Vanifa that does exactly the same for 4 mana and can be actually found by your cards?
I don't even know what Vanifer does, so I have to look up the card.
Vanifa is literal birthing pot. You sack another creature and search out your deck for another creature that has CMC +1. It's a green-blue 2/4. You can't do it. I'm not sure what I can't do. Like Vanifa also goes infinite with any other creature. So you have a chain to Kiki Chiki and
Oh yeah, I think my friend brewed that a while back, and people were gonna say it was gonna break modern. It was like really popular for like a week, and then it died.
okay. So transferring knows you need to untap Vanifa. So I actually played Vanifa pot for a bunch of time, and you start with a mana dog, you get Script Ranger, you untap Vanifa, you sack Script Ranger, get Renegade Relia, get back Script Ranger, untap Vanifa. You sack Script Ranger, get Deceiver Exarch, untap Vanifa. You sack a Renegade Relia, get Angel, flicker the Seaver Exarch, untap Vanifa, you sack Angel, get Kiki Chiki, go infinite. So there is a chain with Vanifa pretty much from every CMC that goes infinite.
But I think they're saying that you need to untap with Vanifer versus like the plain bound is you can just activate right away. So if you have 4 mana, you combo. If you have a Vivien in hand.
No, you don't combo because so let's just say you go Accomplice, activate, put Vivien into play, activate +2. Your opponent is either gonna kill the Accomplice, or you would have won anyways because you could have untapped.
No. But they're saying that like you in a vacuum, if you have 4 mana, you win the game. Versus Vanifer, if you have 4 mana, you have to cast it and then untap with it.
Okay, but there's like a subtle difference between 2-card combo and 1-card combo. Like Vanifer is an engine in itself.
I mean,
and those two are only good with each other.
Yeah, I mean, I see the pros and cons with it in the sense that like and it's with how fast Martin is, you kind of want to be able to just activate it right away versus maybe you're looking at the resiliency of the combo, right? I think I think it's kind of comparing apples to oranges when you're comparing one to the other in that aspect.
So my guess would be that this combo is just not good enough. It's neither fast enough nor resilient enough for Modern to have any sort of impact.
I don't know. I've lost too many games against plain bound Accomplice, putting a Luca in play and then getting an Emrakul in. So I'm not very fond of plain bound Accomplice. So I can't say much about that card.
The main problem with so let's just say the difference between putting Emrakul into play and going for infinite Kiki Chiki combos. The Kiki Chiki dies to everything. Like, even if you can't kill the Accomplice because you have an Unholy Heat that isn't delirious, you can kill Kiki Chiki. And then you have you sack Vivien. Oh, actually, you don't sack Vivien at the end of time because you flickered it.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's actually not that bad. But then again, like, you have a Vivien and no good creatures in the deck because you're running the full combo package. So what do you want to find? I guess you could make 4/4 Rhinos. Like, beat your opponent down with that.
I mean, worst case scenario, you could also just supplement with loot. Like, I don't know. I feel like, again, like, I think you're kind of focusing on the backup plan more so than your game one plan. And like, if your game one plan's a glass cannon, it's a glass cannon, right?
Like, this is the same problem that we talked about with the Voodoo Druid, that there is no plan B, and if plan A isn't good, and plan A usually isn't good, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah,
and
I mean,
this
but
Yeah,
that's
go
fine
ahead.
though, right? Like that's the definition of like a glass cannon combo deck, right? Like if it's attacking on a different axis, and you just hope your opponent doesn't interact game one.
I mean, yeah, I get where you're coming from. So it's first of all my personal preference in deck choices that I don't like those kinds of decks, but it's also like those kinds of decks haven't been good in Modern for a while now.
So I guess to take a step back, I don't think it's gonna be good. I just am explaining the thought process and the appeal of why people would want to try it.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can accept that. So if we are aware that it's a combo that exists but isn't gonna be good, I can accept that.
I will guarantee you I will probably lose to this combo at least once this card is released. So I am not gonna say anything.
To be fair, you're playing Absan, so kind of deserved, right?
There's actually
Anyway,
oh sorry.
yeah, go ahead.
There was actually one more card that I forgot to put into the resident, but we can finish your thought and then we can go to it.
I also would have had another card that kind of looked interesting. I'm not sure if you're thinking about the same. So let's do your card first, maybe.
It's probably not. It's Citizen's Crowbar. I don't know if that's what you were thinking.
I'm not even sure what that does.
Perfect. Let me pull it up here. I like how all the pictures of crowbars come up. It's hilarious. But it's oh god, let me zoom
Oh
in.
no, we're not thinking about the same card.
No, I don't think so. I'm gonna bring this up because all people actually asked me about it and I just forgot. But it's a 2 mana equipment. It's white, one and a white. It's when it comes into play, you create a 1/1 green white citizen, and you attach the crowbar to it. An equipped creature gets +1/+1 and has white tap, sacrifice citizen's crowbar, destroy target artifact or enchantment, and equip 2. So I want to compare this to something like Minriki Gusari, which it kind of has a similar effect where it gets pumped. It gets +1/+2, I believe, and then you can unattach it, I believe, or tap the creature, and then you can destroy an equipment. This is kind of different. It has some plus sides and some downsides. The plus side is you get a body, um, and it's essentially just a 2 mana 2/2. While Minriki Gusari is kind of technically a dead card if you just have it and there's no equipment to target. The other plus side is you could also sacrifice the crowbar to destroy an artifact. The downside is you have to sacrifice the crowbar to destroy an artifact or a champion. So I think there's a lot of things going for it where it can be turnerable with Stoneforge Mystic. It does get become a body, so it's not just like a spot removal spell that is awkward. If you've paid attention to kind of like my deck building philosophies and sideboarding, like I want my hate cards to be a silver bullet, or if they're kind of a spot removal spell, to have like a body attached to it. So something like Atlan Liberator I'm really high on, over something like Sealer Primordium. Another example is like Kasali Primage, where you have like a body attached to it, and it's synergized with your other equipment, and it's not just sitting in your hand. If your opponent has a target, you can actually attack your opponent with it. Downside is again you have to sacrifice this. I feel like this would have been a lot better if Luris was still legal because you can just bring it back and make a 2/2 again. So I think this card is close. Um, Again, because you can tutor for with Stoneforge Mystic, there's decks where that bring in like Leyline of Sanctity, for example, like Living End or Belcher. It is kind of slow to deal with that card, but just having something that you can just have a one of to tutor for post board is so powerful that it's very, very, very close.
I think what breaks this card is that you have to tap the creature, and the creature gets the ability.
Mm-hmm.
If the crowbar itself had the sack effect, I think this would be playable.
Yeah, it's the same with Minriki Gusari though, because you have to tap the creature with Minriki Gusari. So it's kind of in that same vein, but you also have to pay an extra white too. So that also is going against it as well.
Well, does Manriki Kusari see play?
I'd had it in when Hammer was tier 1. I actually really liked it in the sideboard. I don't think enough people played this. I know Hammer played this in the mirror, but I don't think enough people played this card.
I'm not sold. I think that the fact that they also can't just kill the creature and like deal with the equipment
Yeah,
makes this kind of bad.
I think it's a lot closer than you, because the floor is so high. It's a 2 mana 2/2 at worst case there. It's like it's so close. Hammer moved to the Murph. Oh yeah, the Skydiver, I think it's what it's called, where you just steal it. That's also fair too. But
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
yeah, again, this
So
is
I agree with your philosophy that like a silver bullet, like this is a silver bullet. Like it's a one-off in a Stoneforge deck. You're not gonna run this like just as a means of artifact or enchantment removal. Let's be real. So it could see play in Stoneforge decks, but then again, don't you have better artifact and enchantment removal already in those kind of decks?
but they're not tutorable though. And like the removable spells that we're playing, like Prismatic Ending, they don't hit Leyline. I guess we have March, but I feel like March isn't something you're gonna want to play a lot of copies of either. So it's kind of like fitting that like niche like role of tutorable removal spell that had a high floor.
But you would still sideboard this and not run a Bane deck.
Yeah, it would be 1,000% sideboard.
Okay.
It just has such a high ceiling because a high floor because it only takes up one sideboard slot. It's tutorable. It's a body, worst case scenario, and you attack with it. So it's the plus sides are there. I think it's kind of awkward because when you actually want to use the removal ability, it's actually the downside, which is kind of funny. But that's what you're using. That's what you have it in the deck for.
I mean, like, if you were to sack the creature, I think this card would be insane because you go like pew 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 pew.
Oh, that'd be interesting. So you just like equip a lingering souls token. I think that's pros and cons to it, right? Because at least like when you sacrifice this equipment, you're still left with a 1/1. You can suit up another equipment after it. That's actually a really interesting card design as well.
But I'm not sure. Like, I would love to throw my constructs and stuff.
I don't know. I think I'd rather leave the body.
Maybe you're valuing creatures higher than me.
Yeah, maybe. Then again, maybe having the repeatability effect is what's higher, too. That would be the upside.
So like this is a one time clear.
Yeah, that's fair.
But then again, like most of your artifact and enchantment removal is a one-time effect.
That's true.
Like unless you're gonna run Trigon Predator in your absent deck.
Or I mean, like I guess I'm just so used to recurring Alon Liberator with Luris. I mean, I guess that's also why you were running Cyril for a little bit, right? So,
Excuse me, what?
isn't that why you ran the Wolf, the 3/3 that like pernicious deeds every turn?
Yeah. It's repeatable and it just scales better.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Or at all. That's the reason.
So, what was the card that you wanted to talk about? And then we can wrap things up. If you remember what
it's Tainted Indulgence.
Tainted.
Do you know by hand what the card does?
No, I don't. Here you go. Raining it on a Dimir card. Go for it.
So this is a 2-mana instant, blue and black. Draw 2 cards, and then discard a card unless there are 5 or more. And I think they're missing a word here, different mana values among cards in your graveyard. Because technically 5 or more mana values would include 5 times 0. And I think, so I might have read a tweet or something along those lines that it's actually incorrect in the English version and the German version has the correct one. But they definitely, so how these cards work, how all of these cards, like this is a repeating design in the set. You have to have 5 different mana values, like let's say 0 through 4, and not like how the card is worded. So this is a first time instant speed effect of those kind of divination with upside. Let's just compare it with I'm actually not sure how the card is called. They used to run it in Phoenix.
Charter Course?
Yeah, Charter Course, exactly. So those kind of effects. Those existed obviously, and all had different trigger conditions with let's say attack with a creature, or I'm not sure what the others were that existed. And this is the first one that you don't really have to enable. And it kinda does, like just playing your game enables this card. So if you could reliably get 5 different CMCs in your yard, I think this is a very good card. Like loot at the beginning of the game where you like looking for answers, or probably not combo pieces because then you don't care about the card advantage later on. But in a, let's say, control the shell, because it also synergizes with draw go control being an instant.
So I know it's different colors, but what is the advantage of this? I know it's an instant. I know it feels a graveyard, but like, wouldn't you just rather run like expressive iteration because it digs deeper?
So the difference is that expressive iteration, you have to use one of the cards immediately.
That's fair. Like, do you think this is like a Grixis control card where you like fueling like a Tasigur or an Angler or something, or a Snapcaster Mage?
You probably don't wanna like fuel any big death threats because then the you'd never meet it in the condition, right?
That's fair because I was thinking like what kind of cards would be like high in the curve that like just would diversify.
I guess, yeah, that could make sense. So, well, obviously you would feel Dixter time of that, but well, we're not allowed to do that anymore. Also, like Chat points out, Snapcaster lost this card. Probably something like that. So, like, obviously something like a Grixis control shell. Like, there were the old shells that used what's mill 2 draw a card, Thought Scour. So you filled your own yard for Snapcaster targets and obviously Delve threats. You could also like fuel a Reanimator shell with this.
That's
So let's say you go blue-black Reanimator, discard your Archons.
But then why not just play Charter Course instead?
It's instant.
That's fair.
You could also like this could also fuel if I'm not sure if there's a Grixis Phoenix shell, but this could fuel Grixis Phoenix.
I feel like this is just awkward. I think Last God brings up a good point where it's like you kind of want a discard mode, like always, and then when you don't, I feel like it's kind of awkward because like you kind of want to have both at the same time, and it's like if you're trying to enable it, like in the first couple turns, don't you want to enable it in the later part of the game? And then when you do that, isn't that kind of I feel like it's like a catch-22 situation with this card. With in terms of having this card and build a deck. At least just at my first glance of kind of just my thirst.
So you're saying you kind of want to have a deck that relies on being able to discard cards, but if you're gonna activate this like the condition, you kind of stranded with the cards that are better in your graveyard at the end.
Because like
how about Lingering Souls?
Yeah, but then you also like if you're going to have a Lingering Souls, right? Like if your deck is designed to mitigate the discard effect, aren't you also just going to want to have that
discard cards?
Yeah, exactly.
So let's do some theory crafting. The old Mardu Pyromancer shells that could discard a bunch of cards for value, let's say Lingering Souls, but also didn't care if they had the cards in hand. So I'm imagining, let's just say a like Spellslinger kind of deck with the 8-drop that you discard your card. Yeah, the Reveler, exactly. So those kind of ideas that you could always discard cards for like having value in the yard, but also don't really care if they are in your hand. So those kind of shells I could see this card being used because it's like it's a 2-mana draw 2. That's very strong if you meet the condition.
No, I think that's a really good example. I think that makes me understand where you're coming from when you said Lingering Souls then because like if you also don't mind having like I guess I'm thinking of like like an Archon, right? Or like a reanimation spell when you mentioned that. Like, well, you also always want to discard that. But like if you have a Seasoned Pyromancer that you draw, you also kind of want to keep that in hand, or a Lingering Souls, or even like a Croxa, right? Like you actually don't mind keeping a Croxa in hand.
But you also can't just discard it, and,
Yeah.
and you don't mind.
Exactly.
So Croaks is actually a very good example, I think. Grixis control with Croaks, let's go.
I'm surprised that shit hasn't been explored yet, but I guess people just aren't exploring. I feel like this is kind of going off tangent. But I feel like a lot of people aren't exploring these kind of potential shells enough. Like I know we touched on Naya earlier. I feel like that kind of shell is potentially very good, and just no one's playing it. I think Grixis is a lot of. I know a lot of there's people that love Grixis, and that's just not being touched either. Ever since Lurrus got banned, so.
I guess, but there's some Grixis monkey lists diving into control, and with that being said, I'm just thinking about Murktide could use this card actually pretty good.
Interesting.
Just came to mind that like first of all, if you're flooded on Murktides, you want to discard them. You also have a bunch of different CMCs in Murktide. Like you're using 0 through 3 regularly, and you have the Murktides itself. The problem is you obviously exile your lot of your cards with Murktide, but it's only 4 Murktides.
I think the problem is when you're playing Murktide, are you also playing Darcy? And if you're playing Dragon Rage Channeler, I feel like you need expressive iterations because you need the sorcery since the rest of the deck are instants.
I agree. I agree.
And it's like on top of that, are you gonna play like is this are you gonna pay like play expressive iteration copies 5 through 6 or 5 through 8? And if the answer is yes, then maybe you're right. Maybe this is the card that bridges that gap. But
I
I
would
don't think
tend
this replaces expressive iteration.
I would tend for more of a control shell with this card. Like not running the full on blue red Murktide shell
Mm-hmm.
where you just go 1 drop, 1 drop, 1 drop and then Murktide you.
Mm-hmm.
More a, let's say, a more like not in your face kind of shell.
Like counter spell, discard spell, fatal
Yeah,
push.
something along those lines. Like more of a, don't want to say more skillful shell, but
A more controlling shell, a reactive shell. So
yeah, I don't know. I think this card is interesting at least, and depending on how difficult it is to meet the requirements.
mhm. um so I think that's wrapping up all the cards unless there's a last minute card that we want to talk about, but I think overall this set is really interesting. I think there is obviously a lot of potential in terms of like obviously the equipment. Um, I think the cards that I'm like really excited about is the equipment, which is probably gonna spawn a new deck. I think the Jun Charm I'm probably more excited about than actual Jun players because I think it's really good. So there are some hitters from this set. It's not a full dud, so that's kind of nice. I don't know what your thoughts are overall from the set.
This is more very low power level compared to other sets.
Mm-hmm.
Like even something like Strixhaven, where initially there wasn't any quote unquote good cards in it, and then after some time, people just realized how good Explosive Iteration, for example, was.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that this is a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
Um, like not all new standard sets have to break modern again.
Mm-hmm.
Like even the last set was with Boseiju and stuff like that was a very good set, and probably the best card out of the new set are the Triomes.
Yeah.
As always, the lands are the best.
I mean, it's one of those things where like modern is like how old? Like over 20 years now. So like to expect a bunch of modern playable cards, I think that's asking a lot. And I feel like if standard sets are like breaking modern, I feel like that's where we don't want to be because that's what Modern Horizons did, and I don't want that.
Eldritch Moon, and not Eldritch Moon. What's the set? I'm thinking about the Oko set. A Throne of Eldraine. Yeah,
Throne of Eldraine, yeah.
exactly.
With
Yeah.
oh my god. The 2 mana Once Upon a Time, like all those cards.
Oh yeah, good card.
Yeah. Yeah, don't break modern, please. Like having
No, I
sprinkling
don't
in one
think
or two
this set
cards
is
is
gonna
fine.
break modern.
No, and I think that's perfect. I think sprinkling in like a couple cards here and there, the Triomes are going to be providing a lot of value in the set. Like I feel like there's going to be value in the set, and it's just having a couple sprinkled in is just I think the perfect power level.
Yeah, I agree. So some interesting designs that are not obviously broken,
Hmm.
but could be used in maybe new shells.
Hmm.
I think that's like my perfect modern set, and with a bunch of like good lands, because lands are always the most interesting thing to me.
I, I feel like the Triumph is just like so funny because everyone's so excited for it. I've had it for like what 2 3 years now. I'm like, this is old news. What are you guys talking about?
It's funny that initially people thought the Triumphs are unplayable.
Yeah, I never got that. It's like it's if it wasn't fetchable, yes, but it's fetchable. And if they ban fetch lands, I don't think Triumphs would be playable. But I think the fact that you can just fetch it for free when you're not going to use that mana
Yeah.
anyway, like you mentioned, it's the ceiling is so high. Lands are good trade currency. That's a very good point.
Totally agree. Like lands are the bread and butter. Let's be real. If your mana base sucks, you're not gonna have fun.
Mm-hmm.
And that's we mentioned this actually in the last video we made. That I think flood protection and screw protection is one of the best designs you could go for in lands.
Yep. Which I think the Triomes will help too. Just because of the cycling, the fetchability, being able to not be color screwed, just does everything you want it to, especially with the Ren and 6. I think that's going to be the highest stock for sure.
Okay, I think we should take a couple more questions from chat if there are any, and then otherwise wrap up the stream and obviously the video that's going up to YouTube.
Yeah, I didn't think it would go this long. I definitely have to start work soon, so there's no other questions. We can call it. Sandy, if you want to type in chat where people could reach you, and I don't know if you have a stream schedule. I know you kind of stream in the afternoon. Sometimes, I guess from my perspective. Did we discuss the boxer? We did. Unlicensed Hearse. I don't know what that card does. Do you?
We discussed the boxer. We kind of said it's probably something like Bloodgast number 5 and 6 in those respective shells. I'm gonna post a bunch of links in chat.
Yeah, please do.
As long as you're busy finding the new cards. Oh, is that no? Yeah, this is one of the vehicles. I also had that on my shortlist, but I figured it's just too slow. But you can go over it if you want.
Yeah, it's 2 mana. It's an artifact vehicle. Exile up to 2 target cards from a single graveyard. And then unlicensed Hearse power and toughness are equal to the number of cards exiled with it. So you can play it for 2 mana, activate it, and it becomes a 2/2. And then you can activate it in the next turn and exile more cards. And then if you end up inevitably crewing it, it ends up being pretty big. I guess you compare it to like Relic of Progenitus. I think the problem is Relic you can tutor with Urza Saga, for example. That being said, this does exile at a quicker rate when you tap it, but the problem is like Relic cycles, exiles the whole yard, and draws a card. And I think these type of effects are tough. Like there's a reason why like Scavenging Ooze isn't seeing a lot of play, and neither is Lion Sash, because kind of exiling like spotchy effects like this is tough when Living End can just flood their whole graveyard. Same with Dredge. So having the ability to exile the whole graveyard is kind of necessary, i.e., like Kai's Guile, Spellbomb, Endurance, etc., etc. So I think this card, maybe in a fair game, is valuable, but it's so slow because you have to pretty much wait 2 turn cycles and then crew it, and it becomes a 4/4. So I think it's kind of tough. I don't know what you think about it, Sadie.
Yeah, I agree. I think like the idea is pretty nice. I think if it was 1 mana, I think this card would be playable and not be broken at all.
Interesting.
But I think at 2 mana, like first of all, you want your graveyard hate either be 0 mana or 1 mana because like it's going to be too late otherwise, especially on the draw. And just I would give it that you target the cards you want to exile, and that like not like Relic where your opponent gets to decide. So this is an upside, but I think that 2 mana is just way too slow. Like on the play, sure, I can see that, but you're gonna have to win a game against Living End on the draw. That's the problem.
I will.
And yeah, as Chad pointed out, if you can't crew this, like this is just garbage.
I will say though, this card is kind of cool because if you have it in play, it will sit there through Living End. So the fact that it's kind of repeatable is kind of nice and doesn't get swept up by a Living End compared to something like Scavenging Ooze.
How many games would you say you win after the first Living End resolved?
Oh, I run Damn. So plenty. I know, Jun. You just auto lose to Living End game 1, but we don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
We also have Daphne Voidwalker, which you also refuse to run for some reason.
Because I think the card is garbage,
Oh.
but that's up for another discussion.
I feel like we could totally have an episode of this totally dedicated to two cards, Daphne Voidwalker and Season Pyromancer. I feel like we
I give Dorothy that I think Dorothy is more playable than Season Pyromancer.
I think that'd be a really good I think we should honestly do that. I think that'd be really fun.
Okay, yeah, we can do an episode. I think that's
I think that's worth it.
me raging on two cards for 2 hours. People would pay for that.
I think it's great. It's they're so good. I don't understand. It's like tilting. Daphne Voidwalker wins games, and then you complain when you lose to Dreads and Living End. And I'm like, there's a card that's main deckable, and it flips all of our bad matchups.
No, I don't complain. So that's you're putting words in my mouth. I'm not complaining. I'm saying like those are tough matchups, and you're gonna lose game one.
But you can just oh my god, we're gonna talk about this another time.
Anyways,
Yeah.
so there's a couple more cards that could be interesting, but I don't think it's actually worth discussing. Like the sweeper effect, where you get an extra card off your graveyard, something along those lines. There are a bunch of cards that, like they're just not gonna be good enough. So that's why we didn't include them in here. And like it's the same with the vehicle, that it's
Yeah.
we know it's not gonna end up in modern.
I mean, if we went over every card that has like an interesting thing but isn't going to see play, this would be like a 10-hour episode, and we're already reaching 2 hours, which I thought would be way over than I was expecting. So
Well, I was kind of expecting like two-ish hours
Yeah.
for recording.
Okay, well that worked out then. But yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and hanging out. This is a lot of fun talking about these new cards. I know you had a lot of fun. There's a lot more Jun spice than Abs. I don't think there's anything that's gonna be. It's like the Crowbar. That's the only thing. It's so sad that I'm like thinking of trying out from an Abzan perspective. But there's definitely a lot of
But
tools.
that's what
for
you get
Jun.
for a short design deck set. If we were to play like Khans over again, well, I would be you'd be a happy camper, and me not so.
Yeah. I guess you're gonna have to change your stream name to Riveteers, right? That's what the new thing is called.
Totally.
Again, I really appreciate you coming on. Again, I think we're gonna plan to do this every set. I think this is a lot of fun, kind of going over these cards if you're down. But
Yeah,
again,
I thought we might do this like every set, and then maybe in between when we got some testing in.
yeah, I think that'd
So
be great.
just maybe quote unquote reaction video to our initial thoughts and how they played out.
Yeah, I think that'd be a really good idea. Just, I guess we can do the like in between, like in the middle, and go from there. Am I in
Yeah,
Dotha? Yes. Am I in? Exactly. That was actually my trade name for a long time. It was like the Indatha guy for a long time, just to make fun of the new name. Um, but again, a catch. If you haven't followed Sani already, let me link your Twitch too. I guess it's in the link tree.
I put my link tree in there, and from there you can basically find all my relevant links.
I mean, like Sani makes really good Jun content, makes really good plays, elaborating. Like I love tuning into his stream. And it's not like he has no results to back it up. He has a bunch of top 8 challenges. He's known as like the Trophy King Killers and all this stuff. He's makes a lot of good content, makes a lot of interesting Jund deck building decisions as well. It's not just some stock brews. Like he always kind of pushes the envelope. Like he played Bone Crusher Giant in a world of Luris was taking over, and I think that's a really cool kind of example of your deck building. Just being able to explore and try things out, and that's going to be nicely supplemented by these new cards as well. So I'm definitely excited to check out his stream once these cards are legal, which I think is a week from now, right? So
Yeah, might be some difficulties actually obtaining them the first couple of days. But I guess from, let's say, beginning of next month, which will be unfortunate because that's when I'm going to be on vacation.
Well, whenever you come back live with these new cards, definitely check them out as well. Again, thanks again for coming on. Is there any last thoughts you have?
No, I think as you pretty much summed it up, it was a lot of fun, and yeah, people should just let us know if they enjoyed this kind of like content, I should say, even with the live commentary, because I very much enjoyed this being a live stream, I think, and then put it up on YouTube.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something we should probably keep for the future episodes.
Yeah, I just don't know if we should parse the audio out, and then I don't know if I have time. I don't know if you have time to like edit the audio if you want to make it into just audio only. But that's something we can touch base offline. I know we've been kind of toying with the idea. So,
Yeah.
are you? So, what are you gonna be streaming next? I think that'd be a good question to ask.
Questions at the end. I'm usually going for Monday streams, so I'm gonna say Monday the. Definitely not looking up the date now. Monday the 25th.
Got it. Okay, perfect. Um, I think I will be. I'm gonna have to go to work now. So I'll probably try to stream actually in a few hours, maybe in like 5 to 6 hours. Try to get a stream in before dinner time. So hope to catch everyone then. But again, thanks for having you on. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, it was great to be here.
Yeah, we'll touch base offline for again a follow up stream for more discussions, and we'll go from there. Take care, everyone.
All right. See you soon.
Bye.